For many people working inside the workers' compensation schemes and the various schemes around Australia can be confusing, very convoluted. There can be some ups and there can be some downs. Someone who's nailed it, knows exactly what to do, of how to make a really good fist of it, is Simone from Functional Health Australia. We're going to get chatting with her straight after this. First of all, we're going to get stuck in today, and I want to welcome Simone Cox from Functional Health Australia. Welcome, Simone.
Thank you.
We're just saying to Simone, hey, here's what I want to grab you on this podcast. And she's like, I haven't got any prep time. And I'm like, that's what I love. I like just going with what's real and what's honest and diving straight in. So look, I've known Sim for, I don't know, probably 15 years. We've actually got some fairly elite swimming backgrounds that we share in that as well prior to getting into the allied health industry. And Simone does a fantastic, there's a lot of work on, I guess, both sides of the scheme, let's be honest, as the sort of the rehab consultancy side of things and also on the treatment side. But I want to try and stick today in and around the consultant side, if that's okay.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So let me start with this. Like, if someone's going to be successful working in and around workers' compensation schemes, and obviously they're all a little bit different. We need to be accredited. We need to go through and know the system and know the rights and wrongs and follow codes and ethics and all that. So let's just park all that bullshit to the side, right, and talk openly and honestly. What would you say is one of the biggest things what the biggest keys to the castle that's going to set someone up for success with workers' compensation?
I think that it comes down to the communication with all the stakeholders. So you've got the insurer, which is obviously a very important part of the puzzle, because obviously they're paying the bills and they're collecting the information in terms of the function to make the bigger decisions later on in the scheme, especially when it gets to the point where someone may go down the whole person impairment claim path. We need to have functional information on the file, but also to liaising regularly with the rehab consultant that is assigned to the file. That's very important, because they're the ones that are going to be meeting with the doctors and discussing the functional upgrades that they're achieving in their treatment, also discussing what treatment they're having, and actually making recommendations around what the treatment plan should be moving forward to achieve the goal. Also to looking at the return to work aspect of, obviously, the injured person's return to work to their pre-injury duties, or whether they're going to make that recovery back to the pre-injury duties, or whether it's just going to be a modification of that or redirection into another industry. So I think that's
it's pretty much a triangular approach.
Yeah, and I think
is one part of the triangle, the rehab providers, the other one, and the insurers, the third part of the triangle.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of liaising with the rehab consultant is very important, because we go in and we do worksite assessments, and in that worksite assessment, a big part of it is obviously looking at the pre-injury job that the person was doing prior to the injury, and looking at all the functional, cognitive and environmental factors that are going to impact on their recovery. So and what they need to achieve to get back to that. And if you don't know that, how can you direct your treatment appropriately to get that person to achieve those goals? And it's a little bit like looking at sport. You know, you're looking at peak performance in a particular sport, you need to know what all the requirements are of that sport and train for that. It's no different in the workers' comp scheme. You need to know what the person does for a job and all the intricate parts of that to be able to take them from injury all the way through that recovery journey back to their original job.
Perfect. Okay, so let me put my thoughts out here and tell me if you see this or feel this, or whether I'm completely off the mark here. But I sort of feel like, in many respects, the only real focus that people have around the workers' compensation scheme when you talk communication is people focus in on having good communication with the NTDs, so with the doctor, the nominating treating doctor, based on the fact that they're the ones that gave me the referral. So if I have a good relationship with the doctor and I suck up to the doctor will do what I want on plans, etc., and I'll get more referrals.
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement, or am I tarnishing a lot of people with the? Well, I am tarnishing a lot of people with the one brush, but I think I'm valid in saying that. I don't feel there is near good enough communication from health providers, allied health providers, with the three that you spoke about before: rehab consultants, the providers, the insurers, and the employees.
Absolutely. Look, I think in terms of doctors want reassurance. They're writing the certificate, so they do want the reassurance from the treater as to where that person is at. But at the end of the day, the doctor's not going to necessarily do what the treater wants. They're going to do what their patient wants, because their business is held up by the patient coming through the door. And sometimes they're not just treating that particular person, they may be treating their whole family. So they want to keep that patient happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually a really good thing to stop and think about. A lot of the time people will go to their chosen provider, which happens to be the doctor that's their family doctor for the last 38 years, right? And it's, they've been taught with their mother, father, brother, sister, kids, auntie, uncle, etc.
Absolutely. And when you start to see a lack of progression on their certificate, it is usually one of the considerations you need to make, that, well, maybe they are taking on board my feedback from a treatment perspective, but also there may be a barrier there in terms of the worker not wanting to move forward in that scheme. So it is something that you need to be aware of, because that is the dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you find that people, providers, go with communication with employers? If you had to rate it, as 0 being absolutely shit and 10 being they're fucking rock stars, like, just be honest, as an industry, how do we go? Do we do a good job, or do we not do a good job? What do you tend to see?
With employers, it depends on certain companies. Like, I've seen some treatment providers do a great job and they keep the employer in the loop in terms of all of.
But if we're talking about the vast majority of people, how would you say it? On a 0 to 10, what would you say?
On the lower end of the scale. Let's
like a -2.
Pretty much.
And look, I'm not trying to criticize people by any stretch of the imagination, but I guess it goes back to those comments I was saying before. I really feel like a lot of people pay lip service to that mentality of, and here you are nodding furiously, like it's, people pay lip service to that whole thing of, oh, I'm a good communicator, I communicate with these. I think a lot of the time I can almost call bullshit 9 times out of 10. It's all they want to do is see the person for that half an hour or that hour session or whatever it is, get them out the door, write the notes, book them back in type of scenario and move forward. Like, obviously they're wanting to get client outcomes. They're wanting to do that. Absolutely. But I really feel there's a disconnect. Actually, the great way of probably saying it is a lack of congruency. There's a lack of congruency between we do this, this, and this for the employers, part of this whole triangular approach, but your actions don't actually replicate that.
I think that there is a lot of treatment providers working in silos to what needs to happen. And I think that the framework around your treatment service delivery in this industry is working collaboratively with each other. And the employer is a massive part of that, because they're the ones that are going to be offering up suitable duties to the worker. They're going to determine whether they're going to withdraw suitable duties. Also, too, I see a lot of providers, treatment providers, that is, giving feedback that isn't necessarily cross-referenced with the employer or the insurer or the rehab consultant, and they're just purely going off the feedback from the patient, which is fine.
Feedback from the patient, and I'm an allied health professional, so therefore what I says goes.
100%. And I think that sometimes it is good to cross-reference with the other stakeholders to just make sure that what is getting told to the treatment provider is actually the case, because a lot of the time there are yellow flags, and you can miss those yellow flags if you're not communicating with all the different parties and you're just going down on one tangent based on the feedback from the patient.
Yeah. So talk to me about communication with the insurers. Obviously, one of the biggest challenges that we hear all the time is oh, I tried to ring them, they didn't get to, they wouldn't take my call, or I spoke to the team leader and left a message, and then they only review the file every 21 days, so therefore they didn't get. What is there tips and tricks and strategies? Like, how do we work around that? How do we get ourselves into a situation so people take our calls, we get open, clear communication with insurers, and obviously get better outcomes as a result?
Yeah, I think in terms of insurers, to be fair, they have huge caseloads.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's no fault of their own. That's just the system. I think in terms of communication with the insurer, it is best in writing. I see that, they do check their emails and they do check the reports that come through. They may not necessarily have time to read the reports in full detail, but quick emails is always effective. I think if you're got a rehab provider that's in the claims management process for that particular patient, that is the best person to give the feedback to, verbally as well as written, because that is the person that's going to make going to be the middle part to giving the communication to all the stakeholders. And we have to report on a monthly basis, but also we're sending off emails regularly to all the different stakeholders in terms of feedback of what's happening with treatment, what's the progress, where can we make changes with the return to work to progress this person along? Do we need to bring forward the medical case conference with the doctor and discuss a flare-up?
It's bloody crucial, right?
Yeah, it's crucial. Yeah.
And it also fairly probably goes to that situation of the better the relationship you invest yourself into with like the insurers, the more you give to them, and the more you apply yourself to creating a relationship built more than just on I'm important, you should take my call type mentality, which I know I'm sweeping a pretty broad brush here, but we've all been there, let's be honest, where it's like you feel like obliged to give them an update, or they ring up wanting an update and you don't want to call back, or you don't have time, or we're busy, and then 3 days later you do and then they don't. And it creates a bit of a stalemate situation. Ultimately, I don't know, do you not look at that as a great opportunity to develop the relationship there for ease of communication later on?
Definitely. And I think in terms of the industry, there's been a massive change. Like over the 17 years that I've been in the industry, I have seen a massive change from regular verbal communication to now written communication. And even if you do a phone call, they will request for you to put that in writing and send that through. So there has been a massive push for everything to be in writing. So if you want to have that direct line to a case manager or an insurer, it is always good to drop them an email and say, look, this is what's happening in terms of treatment. Is there anything you would like me to look at in particular? Because they may have a strategy happening on the file as well where they need particular information. So it is always good to check in with them and let them know where you're at with your treatment in between, obviously, doing the allied health recovery request. So I think that doing emails is probably the best way to build that relationship with them, and also building trust that they're getting the service that they are paying for. Yeah, I think that's really important to demonstrate that to the insurer.
Awesome. Any other top tips or tricks? Is there something that's just that absolute golden nugget you think that everyone should do or not do, etc., that's going to make them more successful in the workers' compensation scheme?
Look, I think that sometimes with treatment providers, they do have that habit of working in silos, and that's just how it's been. But I think that opening up that line of communication to someone like a rehab provider and working closely with them and aligning your medical case conferences with that rehab provider. I
think them as an ally, not as a competitor.
Yeah, so I have seen in the past, and I've had experience with it directly, where the treater will go and organise their own treatment medical case conference with the doctor and the worker, and they don't necessarily inform you of that. You find out about that later. I think that it's always better to make sure that you're contacting the rehab provider, aligning the case conference with their one, and coming in as a group and a team to work together to get that person back to where they need to be, rather than having two meetings going and then there could be conflicting information. The doctor then
also leaves the doctor in an awkward position, doesn't it?
Yeah, they get confused. So they're like, who am I reporting to? Who am I making the changes on the certificate for? And then what happens with the return to work plan? Because at the end of the day, ultimately, it comes down to either the return to work coordinator at the workplace, if there's no rehab involved, or it's coming down to the rehab consultant to write that plan. And so that treatment needs, and the certificate needs to be in alignment with what the plan is in the workplace.
Awesome. Perfect. Hey, Simone, I love chatting with you. You're always super knowledgeable, and obviously the workers' compensation side is just really your jam from both sides of the equation. So really appreciate the gold nuggets, and yeah, no doubt it's been very beneficial to everyone. And yeah, can't wait to chat with you again and pull apart the changes that are coming for everyone in the industry as well.
Welcome.
Awesome. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Profitable Practice Podcast. I would love nothing more than for you to be able to leave a review. I get so much joy out of listening and reading the amazing things that you guys say about this. So please subscribe to our channel, leave a review, and share it with your friends. Let's get some more fantastic information out there so all of us can grow the industry together. Cheers for now.